What NSFW fact did you learn at an embarrassingly late age? I'm late to the party with this, but this is an embarrassing case of bad women's anatomy, made worse by the fact that I'm woman. A couple of weeks ago I learned that when pregnant women are told in labor things like you are 7 centimeters dilated, I thought that they were literally talking about the vagina rather than the cervix. In my mind, the vagina literally just became a huge 10 centimeters open black hole into the body. I only learned a few weeks ago that it is the cervix they are talking about. Did I also mention that I'm nearly 5 months pregnant? I guess it wasn't a necessarily late age, but I was telling a whole group of horrified friends in high school about how I was eating out my cousin for doing something, only to later be told the difference between eating out and chewing out. In middle school I wasn't uninterested in the opposite sex, surprising, gay or anything sexual. My friend told me women could have multiple orgasms at once, and my only reaction was, that sucks, not knowing what an orgasm was. When I was a sophomore in high school I was awkward and regularly picked on. I thought I was super cool wearing LA Looks hair gel to style my hair with a duck butt. The stuff often dried and peeled and left white chunks in the hair if you touched it too much. So at the lunch table this girl goes, "It looks like you have jizz in your hair," and I didn't know what that word was, so I just said, "Yeah, I do," and then nobody talked to me the rest of the day. When I was in high school, my parents, my best friend and I were going somewhere, parents in the front seat, me and my buddy in the back. While we were driving, my folks were listening to some oldies on the radio. There was an interview with the lead singer of and the Mysterians. In the interview, he said the song 96 Tears was originally called 69 Tears, but they changed the name because they knew the song wouldn't get any airplay with the original title. Me, I don't understand why it wouldn't get played on the radio. 96, 69. They're just numbers. Awkward pause. My best friend leaned into the front seat and said, "Mr. and Mrs. Groovy Brent, I've got this one." Later that day he explained what I had just asked my parents. My buddy thought the penis went into the clitoris at the age of 19. That being circumcised didn't mean the head of your dick gets chopped off. I was too old when I found that out. I thought being a bottom was when the guy was on the bottom of the girl. Only realized when someone jokingly asked if I was a power bottom, and I said, "Oh yeah." They never let that one go. For whatever reason, I grew up thinking that men were supposed to have 3 testicles. I was a 13-year-old boy before learning the truth. I thought I was deformed, or maybe my third ball just hadn't developed yet somehow. I'm not really sure what I was thinking. I just remember the absolute embarrassment I felt when one of my friends found out about this misunderstanding. I had to break it to my 27-year-old friend that she doesn't pee from her clit. I knew a 25-year-old barback that argued with me about this. His words, "If you don't pee out of the clitoris, then what is it for?" All I could think of was all the poor women who had ever had sex with this man, who didn't know what a clitoris was. I'm an RN, and I told a patient I needed her to put a tampon in before we collected her urine sample because she had vaginal bleeding. She looked at me like I was an absolute idiot and said, "You can't do that. If you put the tampon in, how can the pee get out?" Mind you, this was a 25-year-old woman who also had 2 daughters. It took about 10 minutes of explaining for her to understand that you don't pee out of your vagina. I still don't think she believed me. Not me, but I had a rather frustrating conversation with someone in high school on the bus about foreskins. He couldn't fathom how someone could be uncircumcised because, and I quote, "How could you even pee then?" The dude literally thought the foreskin covered the entire penis at birth, and you had to be circumcised so you could pee. What a wet dream is. I remember in school being taught, but not knowing what it was. I even remember answering the question on a 6 at TED. Wet dreams are also referred to as nocturnal emissions. Blah blah blah. But I had no idea what they were talking about. I always thought a wet dream meant you peed yourself. Not me, but I had a friend who basically explained that he didn't know that if you had a vagina you still had a urethra. I think he was in high school before he learned otherwise. He just thought that the labia essentially acted as flagellants, and when you needed to pee they would open like a trapdoor and your urine would just fall out. I still laugh about this. Not me, but an old roommate of mine. He comes in and asks me if my husband and I were gonna have sex that night. I told him probably not, because my husband got home late. He then asks me if his girlfriend can have one of my birth control pills, because they didn't have any condoms. I told him no, because I have to take it. He asks me why, because I said my husband and I weren't gonna do anything. I told him you have to take it at the same time every day for it to work. He looked at me like an idiot, and that was the day I had to explain birth control to my 23-year-old roommate. I didn't learn what a clitoris was until I read The Color Purple 3 years after my supposed health class in high school. And that I even have a clitoris edit. HEATH equals HEALTH. There's more than one size of condom. That tampons stay inside the woman. I thought they went in the bathroom, popped one in, and it soaked up all the blood. Then they removed it, and were good for a few hours. Cum is supposed to leak out of a woman's vagina after sex. If she's walking around, I never really thought of it until my last girlfriend mentioned it, suggesting it was weird. Then I read about it on here, someone mentioning that it's normal. We broke up afterwards, so she still does know that there's movement involved in PIV6 rather than just insertion and laying there. The difference between vulva, labia and clitoris. My brother went the first 22 years of his life thinking that every woman in the entire world got their period during the last week of the month. My girlfriend in high school once rubbed my dick over my pants in my truck before a movie. When we talked about how that was later in the evening, she said that was my first hand job. She honestly thought that was a hand job. I very recently discovered that the clitoris is outside of the vagina. My first girlfriend never learned where it was, so I didn't think anything of it. My current girlfriend, when we started having sex, she said, "Don't forget the clit," and I went, "What?" I had a general idea about sex from a very young age, but didn't officially understand the mechanics of intercourse until I was a young teen, after I asked embarrassingly loud in class what a boner was. Women wipe themselves with TP after going pee. Was in my mid-20s when I found that out. You can suck and lick anything as long as you wash it off first. I used to be grossed out by oral sex because you either literally piss with those organs or come close to it. My male housemate in college, who was 21 at the time and not a virgin, totally didn't believe me when conversation led to my telling him that girls don't pee out of the same hole the penis goes in. He had to go down to his room and Google it, and then we never spoke of it again. I was raised Catholic. I used to think the sex of the wedding night was so ingrained in the sacrament of marriage that the copulation occurred in some room in the church. I may have even thought the altar at some point, but I think I realized that at least was silly at an early age. How many tampons a lady goes through during her period? I was/am 26 when I found out. Met a girl in college who didn't know guys' balls move with temperature. Thanks to some sub-psych ed, my first boyfriend thought HIV spontaneously generates when two guys have sex. We went to get tested for HIV after we fricked for the first time, even though we were both virgins before. The reasoning was bad, but getting tested still isn't unreasonable. Sex isn't the only way to get HIV, and I've known people who found out they were HIV positive because they got tested before their first sexual experience. In one case, it ended up being transmission from rendering first aid, which is just terrible luck. I never learned the other. People also lie about being virgins, especially if they're victims of sexual abuse. If your first sexual contact doesn't use an effective barrier, getting tested for STIs after isn't unreasonable. Not me, but I have two hilarious stories about this. I work with surgeons and often they are sheltered sweethearts. Neither of these stories involve patients around. They are either in the lounge or before, or after patients are around. Story 1. A few of us were making silly motorboat jokes to each other. An attending established doc, for those that don't know, mid-40s age, walked in and said, "I also motorboat. I have a spot on the lake." Someone had to explain to him what motorboating was. He has 3 kids. Story 2, ironically, same attending. A resident who is 27 already a doctor, but still training working with attending, was about to get married. He came to the room, boasting about his bachelor party and how it was all his guy friends from growing up, school, and residency. He was so excited to show us and the attending the video of all his guy friends giving him a golden shower. None of us explained that a champagne shower is not called a golden shower. We just let him go around the room and say things like, all my friends gave me a golden shower, look I have video. He and the attending were so into the video. And I couldn't help but gawk and hold back extreme laughter at the situation. I quote the IT crowd all the time. Even still now I'm 22. So it's pretty sad to begin with. Thing is, it frequently high-five people and belt out Eiffel Tower. When doing so, it'd often be met by a couple of laughs, whether thief seen tick or not. However, when it start doing this to my friends who are girls, they'd often pull a weirded out face. Some flat out saying what the frick. After a quick Google last year I discovered that an Eiffel Tower is a threesome 6-act. Spelling. Not me, but a friend of mine. He was 22 when I slapped him with the fact that women give birth from the vagina. He thought women give birth from the belly button. I just learned from my wife today that women are born with all the eggs they will ever produce in their life. I'm 28. Edit. Apparently there is some relatively recent science that would indicate that women can make new egg cells with stem cells, but how much this contributes is unclear. I'm uncircumcised and it took me way too long to understand that my penis was different than most guys, since here in the US, circumcision is more popular. Age. 22 women have to wipe after peeing. I thought they just wiggled on the seat or something. It was before leaving for date with an ex, and she said I gotta pee right quick. A minute later she yells 40p. I say I gotcha, but thought you just needed to pee her. Yeah, I'm done. I need to wipe. It was then I realized. I never told her I didn't know, but she kept asking me at dinner that night what was wrong, and that I looked troubled. I asked my parents what a BJ and a lesbian were at the same time. I was told one is a woman who loves women and the other a department store. I didn't know what an orgasm was until I was about 14. Until that point I was completely stumped as to why people liked sex. I thought I was that small percent of women who couldn't orgasm. Finally, I can. How to pee using a urinal. I just never learned how to do it. I always used the stalls and would lower my pants and pull down my underwear. Then one day, I went to the beach and really had to pee. For some reason I didn't want to go in the ocean. I think we were leaving, and I went to the bathroom. Turns out there were no stalls, but I really had to go. So I took my 18-year-old self to the urinal and just figured it out. It was a good day. I'm in my 30s and gay, and, until a few years ago, I had no idea that some came back out of the vagina after sex. I thought it just stayed up there. Not me, but the other guy. I had a vasectomy after my son was born at my age 28. It was sort of common knowledge thereafter around the office that I had done this, and that also 2 years later my had wife left me and our preschool age kids, which was really for the best. I was a single dad. The following exchange happened when my son was around 10. A 20-something male co-worker came up to me one day and asked, "You still have sex, right?" My answer was my girlfriend wouldn't have it any other way. Laughing, then he asked, "Since you've had that vasectomy, after you have sex, what comes out?" With a straight face I gave him my best answer: sand. I had to be probably 17 or so when I learned that girls don't grow a vagina when they hit puberty. I had babysat girls and changed their diapers before, but I didn't look at their business. That's why I was always so confused when you heard about people doing bad things with underage girls. I thought if they hadn't hit puberty, then there's no vagina. So then what do they do? I also didn't know about the Christian poop hole loophole either. I literally just found out morning wood is actually a sign of good health, and not getting it could be pointing towards addition.